welcome everyone to the Tory Burch Foundation Small Business Webinar Series. Today's session is Your Business Finances Are Personal. That just, it just hits. So today we're going to be understanding our relationship with money. We're going to learn how to manage personal finances and use those lessons to help business finances, whether you're saving to start or you're gearing up to grow. I'm Molly Heffernan, Vice President of Marketing at the Tory Burch Foundation, and I am just overjoyed to be here with Natalie Torres Haddad. She is a repeat small business webinar speaker for us, and one of the very first webinar speakers we had back in 2020. So we are lucky that nearly 4 years later, we have you back to talk to everybody. Natalie is a financial literacy educator, bilingual podcast owner, co-host of Financially Savvy in 20 Minutes, a 2 times TEDx speaker, and her work has been featured in major media as well as on-air appearances from Telemundo, NBC, ABC, more. I mean, we just truly couldn't be in better hands. And so a couple reminders before I turn it over. After Natalie's presentation, we are going to have plenty of time for Q&A. So throughout the session, please drop your questions in the Q&A box. We're going to do our very best to get to as many as we can. And in that chat, keep up the community building and all the fun. That's where we want to see you, you having a good time with each other. Take notes. Today's session will be recorded and you can watch your inboxes for a replay link. So with that, over to you.
Thank you so much, Molly. That is such a sweet introduction. I don't know why, I still get emotionally happy and just excited, and it's amazing to see how long I've been doing this. When you say some of those things, I'm like, it's been 20 years in the making, but I am thrilled to be a part of doing this again. Tory Burch Foundation has been such a wonderful organization to work with. Like you said, it's already been 4 years, and to see the amount of growth that we've seen within the community, I mean, just to show like all the people that are joining and that registered. And today's session is so needed, especially in the times that we're in. So I'm more than honored to be a part of this, because I'm about empowering other women, empowering just business entrepreneurs, anyone that just wants to get more of that information they need, especially when it comes to financial literacy. So it's really my honor to be a part of this. So thank you so much for having me again. And we're just going to get right into it, because I know all of you are busy. You're taking time today to be with us. And thank you for investing this time for yourself. So the first thing I want all of you to know, today's topic, if you haven't remembered, it's your business finances are personal. I've heard this saying, and I know many of you have also heard it, where it's like, don't take it personal. It's, it's business. And for me, and so many business owners that I talk to, they'll say, hold on, of course it's personal. We've invested our time, our money, our energies, really maybe most likely part of their purpose that they've been doing for so many years in their lives. How can it not be personal? So it's really important to understand that, yes, it's personal, but when that saying is really talking about maybe the financial side, to help you think a little bit more rational. And I'll give you some tips along the way on how that can also help. One of the things that I think about when we're talking about our finances, it's also very emotionally connected to everything that we do. I always say money is probably one of the strongest relationships we have that we don't even know we have, whether it's a good relationship, whether it's a bad relationship, whether it's filled with a lot of trauma. This is something that we also need to unpack, right? We need to heal. We need to do the work. It's something like you're taking a shower every day, right? You can't just do it once and done, you never have to do it again. It's something that takes time and work. So today we're just going to get right into it. Feel free to take notes if you want, but as Molly mentioned, this will be recorded, so you can always look back and see if there's something that you felt you wanted a little recap on. And when we get started, I want you to start off writing 2 things down first. First, what is your goal for the next 12 months? We're already at the end of January, but what is your financial goal that you want to reach for, 1, your business, or if you're planning to start one, and 2, a personal one? Take about a minute or 2 to do so. And feel free to please put your answers on the chat, because you'd be surprised. You might find your accountability group, your partner, as they might have the same goal, and most likely you'll be accomplish it a lot quicker. So go ahead and do that. Take about a minute or 2. I love it. I see 5 million in sales within 10% of Jeep. And P was that from Oreos? Obviously, I love seeing that people have such high hopes already for this year. Generate 300,000 in revenue. Grow your business. Reduce debt and increase savings. We'll definitely talk about that too. And stick around because I'm going to have a cheat sheet for you as well to help you achieve that. Secure more grants. Yes. If you haven't checked out the Tory Burch Foundation website, please do, because not only do they provide tons of resources, fellowships, I personally know so many of the attendees that are recipients. And honestly, this is one of the best accountability groups that you can get. Awesome. Structuring for budgeting and scalability. That's also key. Awesome. A few more. Go ahead, put it in your chat. Okay. And if you're still wrapping it up, go ahead and write and put today's date too. I want you to be able to look back on this and say, oh my gosh, in 2024, this was my goal. Not only did you reach it, you probably exceed it. And if you didn't reach it, don't be so hard on yourself, but most likely you're a step closer to reaching that. All right. So let's just get right into it. Your money story. How many of you have already heard this, right? Feel free to put this in the chat if you know your money story already. Some of you are like, what is that? How is that even connected to my business finance along with my own personal? Our money story can be very tricky. Like I said, it's a relationship. It can be started from the first time you started dealing with money, or maybe you saw someone in your home dealing with money. How did they react to that? Our money story does make a difference in how we see our future when it comes to our finances. It's sometimes connected to trauma, sometimes it's connected to bad experiences, and sometimes it's connected to great ones. I always ask, do you remember the first time you got your paycheck, right? For maybe your first job or your first sale? How did that feel, right? What was that feeling behind it? Was it excitement? Was it something that made you want to work harder? For me, I still remember the first paycheck I got was a minimum wage job. And my thought was, that's it after taxes, after everything is paid. So everyone has a very different reaction. Your money story is important to understand because you also can know that you can rewrite it. It's not set in stone. It was a chapter in your life and it's something that you can move forward. When we talk about traumas, it's maybe a triggering trauma. Maybe it's a hidden trauma that you didn't even know you had until you start dealing with your finances. Many times clients will tell me, I really want to expand my business, or I want to bring in multiple income streams, or I want to do something different with my company. And I usually ask them, well, first, how are your personal finances? And if the answer is a hot mess, guess what? Your business probably will also be a hot mess. The reason why you want to look at your personal is because a lot of those habits, a lot of the things that we do on a daily basis, unfortunately also transfers to our business. So don't feel bad if you're like, oh my gosh, that's me. This is why you're here. This is why you're investing your time. Getting a group, and we'll talk about accountability groups, talk about, having the right team in place, because we're not supposed to know everything, right? My story and why I always tell people why I love what I do is because the truth is, for me, it wasn't easy. It never has been. It was this opportunity that I had to open a business. And how many of you please put it in your chat. How many started a business because you found a need, you had a solution to a problem, you decided that, there is something out in the market, but it's not as good as my product, right? And so we create something out of thin air, right? We invest our money and time in it. And for me, I knew it was a struggle the first time I started, going off on my own and doing, starting a business can be daunting. And especially if you don't grow up in a home where, business was talked about, let alone finances or financial literacy. As Molly mentioned, one of my first TEDx talks is called The Foreign Language of Financial Literacy, for that reason, because it is an evolving language. It's constantly changing. And there's no way I expect people to know everything, let alone be experts in that field. For me, English is my second language. I'm an immigrant refugee from El Salvador. I was born there, but I was raised in Inglewood, California. So I knew what it meant to grow around, unfortunately, scarcity, feeling the lack of. And because of that, unfortunately, I didn't really necessarily get the right tools I needed to really become financially savvy. It wasn't until later in high school, then in college, that I really found my purpose. I got my degrees in finance, focus on international business, as well as emphasis on real estate. later my master's, later I started a nonprofit and business. And, luckily it came easier to me. However, there were so many challenges that I found along the way that I thought, if I'm having trouble with this, I can't expect someone that's not excited about their finances, like not excited about learning about money. So I wanted to make this an easier accessibility for people. And that's why I do everything in bilingual, right? Like she said, I have a podcast. I've been doing this for almost 14 years now. I've been a financial literacy advocate and educator for more than 16 and in the finance industry for 20 years. I will disclose, I'm not your CPA, I'm not your accountant, I'm not your CFP, which I highly recommend you to get those people on your team because they are extremely knowledgeable in tax law and really planning what you need to succeed. And so I love referring to people, this is where you should go. And I'll talk about resources that Tory Burch Foundation also has. But for me, I knew that I knew certain things, but there was so much I still needed to learn. So understanding my money story was the first thing. And that's what I want all of you to realize. When you wrote down those goals, there's a reason why you wrote down that goal. And I want you to think about, okay, what's going to possibly be a challenge I have to overcome? What might be a roadblock? Or what are my strengths? Let's celebrate the strengths that we have, right? Some of us are like, oh, I love talking to people. I'm great at sales, but the financial side, it's not my thing. Well, maybe you could bring in a partner. Maybe you can bring in the right CFO, the right accountant, the right bookkeeper that's going to help you stay on track. I don't expect anyone to say, I'm 100% on all of those. There's no such thing, right? Perfection is an illusion. And I don't expect anyone to say, oh, right off the bat, day one business was great, because that's not true. And the reality is if people telling you it's great from the beginning, they're most likely lying. So as your business grows, you grow and you become a little bit more knowledgeable when it comes to your finances. So here we have, what is the difference between your personal finance versus your business finance? I mentioned the growth stages. So we have so many different stages, and put it in the chat box. Would love to know if you are starting a business, if you've been in business for more than 5 years, if you're just, starting out, maybe it's only been a few years. Some of you started businesses during the pandemic, which is incredible. But where do you stand, right? Where do you feel that your business can go to? Where are you starting off right now? It's important to know what your plan looks like as far as I think of a roadmap, right? It's never a straight line. It's something that can go, it can definitely be hills, battles, and it can sometimes just be easy going. So when it comes to our business finances, there's a lot of similarities with our personal. However, let's be clear, they should be kept separately. Now, I know for many of us, that's not always the case, right? So how many of you seen Shark Tank, right? I can't see all of your beautiful faces, but a lot of you are like, oh yes, I've seen that show, or you've seen other pitch shows. And the first question they usually ask is, how did you get the seed money? How did you get your company started? How did you get, investors in? And usually they'll say, it was my own money. Maybe I tapped into my retirement account. Maybe I took out all of my savings, or I fundraised, whatever that case might be. And so what happens is a lot of us start commingling in the beginning, right? And so it's very important to be clear on what your business expenses are, what your business income is, and having that separate from your personal. So, right, having your own bank account, having a credit card, having designated a loan, if you're going to get one for your business, that is separate, because it can get very tricky. It can get overwhelming. It could be, it just can get messy as well. So we want to make this as simple as possible. I think of it as, like I said, it's a language. I don't expect any of us to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to learn an entire alphabet and then, the paragraph will be perfect by the end of the day. No, we need to practice saying it daily, learning a different letter every day. It will evolve and become easier, but because it's always evolving, that means there's always new challenges that arise. And as your business grows, you'll see that. The first 2 years sometimes feel exciting and different because you're creating, you're cultivating, you're creating a team, you're possibly getting new clients, you're doing things that you've never done before. And then we see peaks happening, right? And so this is really important to know where you are to say, okay, this is how I want to get to the next level. Connecting with people from this group, I think, is so powerful, because not only are you coming from a place of like-minded people, but they want to help you succeed. So this is what we're here for, knowing the difference between the two. Now, something I want also touch base is forming new financial habits. So what I mean by this, oftentimes we don't know what we're doing on a daily basis. If you can, recommended, take at least every day. I say possibly every day, depending on your business. So if maybe you're in retail, if you constantly have income coming in every day, take the time, maybe 10, 15 minutes every day to just look through your spreadsheets, look over what your sales were for the end of the day. But if you don't have that time, do at least an hour a week. Set time for yourself to sit and look at your finances and say, okay, this is what I had for my incomes. This is what I had for my expenses. How am I paying my vendors? How am I doing with paying my bills? That 1 hour that you set for yourself is going to change the way you feel about your business. And so you're not coming blank and saying, oh no, I only check this once a month, or I only check this maybe twice a month and I totally forgot to pay a bill, or I forgot that this vendor needed the deposit before starting, right? Or I forgot about my client's order. Taking the time to do that is just, it's just going to save you so much time. In the beginning, it kind of feels overwhelming because you're like doing so much work, but it becomes a system. And doing a ritual, my ritual I'm going to share with you is one of my favorites. People laugh when I say, oh, you can make paying bills fun. And they're like, are you crazy? But the truth is, make it your environment that you'd want to come be present for. So what I mean by that is I like to create like a spa-like environment when I'm paying bills. Because let's be real, paying bills can be frustrating. It can be overwhelming. It can definitely feel like it's taking over what you want to be doing, the creative side, possibly. So what I do is I have my candle, I have tea that has no caffeine. The whole point is you don't want to be overstimulated. And let's be real, we get a regular adrenaline rush when we're talking about money. And so when it comes to your business, saying, you know what, this is a time I don't want any calls, nothing bothered. I would even recommend putting your cell phone away, not having anything that's going to interrupt that 1 hour, 20 minutes, whatever you're going to take to sit down and properly be present and focus. And so that way you can go through the list and say, okay, I checked my income today. I checked all the bills that are due that I have already paid, and having a little filing system in place. It doesn't have to be huge, right? Just having a place at your desk where you know everything is kept. Start off as soon as possible, right? Some of you are like, well, I don't really know how to go about it. Talk to your accountant, talk to your CPA and say, what should I be doing? What systems are out there? There's so many different apps now. I mean, I'm old school. I love Excel. I love Quicken, QuickBooks. There's different things that you can use to help you organize. Do what works best for you, but also seek help. That way you stay on top of things. The best advice I got from my accountant, she's a CPA, and she said, don't do it on your own. Even I'm like, I don't feel totally equipped to do that. But she's like, always get someone that knows tax law. Things are constantly changing. And we can see that proven with the pandemic, with everything post-pandemic, everything that's been changing as far as loans, the way requirements are needed for loans too. So many of you, and I'll talk about that as well in a second, but having that ritual in place is going to help you. So once a week, a date with yourself, maybe an hour. And then last but not least, I said accountability. Why do I want you to have an accountability group? This accountability group is going to keep you on track and say, check in maybe once a week, maybe once a month, and say, hey, Natalie, have you focused on, your sales, or how is there any challenges? Is there something that we can help you with? Have an accountability group is going to help you move forward faster. And then you can get some great ideas. I have an amazing tribe. I call them my tribe of business entrepreneurs, or women that I want to be like them when I grow up. But they always come up with great ideas that maybe I didn't think of, or I piggyback on and say, hey, this worked for me. Did this work for you? Or maybe the first 2 times I tried it, it didn't work, and the third time was golden. I love sharing that type of knowledge. This is why I love what I do. And I feel honored to be part of Tory Burch Foundation today, because we get to share what we've learned along the way. I don't want people to make the same mistakes I did. And if you do, that's okay. We learn from them. Trust me. Some of my most financial big mistakes that I made, never did them again. And guess what? I thrived more because of it. So I rather say, hey, make a mistake with $1,000 as opposed to make a mess up with $1 million, right? And so we have to think that mindset will change. Now, the money and mental health side of it. Ooh, that's a big one, right? So what does that mean? Financial wellness. Why do I do what I do? So this is a little info that I wanted to share with you guys. It's not easy thinking about our mental health, right? It is overwhelming. It can be maybe something we put in last minute, meaning we want to take care of every single person in our lives, right? We want to take care of our family. I'm a new mom to a newborn, so I know how that goes. But we tend to put ourselves last. When it comes to our finances and our mental health, I want you to put you first, because for this reason, if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else. And so when I hear people say business is personal, I understand why. When someone tries to tell me, hey, let's set up a meeting, and they don't show up, or they want to take an hour meeting when we said it'd be 15 minutes, I look at as time taken away from my family, time taken away from my business. And so I am very mindful of my boundaries. That wasn't always the case. And in the beginning, a lot of you that are maybe under 5 years in business, you're willing to take anything. And I understand that, but I want you to start learning how to say no. Because when you say no to the clients that aren't going to be helpful for you, that are not going to actually bring you enough profit, you can start saying yes to the ones that will. And you feel less resentful, you'll feel less stressed out, you'll feel a lot more confident in your decisions. And so for me, I'm at that point now too, where I can say that, I can create those boundaries, but I can't stress enough why mental health is dear to me. And that's one of the things that I felt fortunate when Forbes did a feature on me. They called me the trailblazer as a mental health and financial health advocate, because you can't have one without the other. If you're physically exhausted and stressed, and like for me, I crave caffeine, I crave sugar, I have, sometimes insomnia, then guess what? All my decisions around finances are going to be irrational. We don't want that. We want our mental and our money to be synced, right? You can't have one without the other. Sometimes people will say, well, what came first, the medical bills, or because I got sick, vice versa, right? So I want you to be very clear on what you're going to do this week. I want you to write that down right now on what you're going to do for yourself. For me, it's that 1 hour of yoga, life-changing. My Tuesday, my yoga is going to help me. It's like a church for me. It's like, just help me feel great. I feel like I took a long nap. It's something I don't budge with. And I want you to do the same, because guess what? You come in a lot better. Your team will notice. People that you work with will love working with you because you're not stressed out, right? So keep that in mind. So with that said, I'm going to do this quick exercise with all of you. I want you to put down whatever you're doing and close your eyes. This breathing exercise is really condensed because we have very short time together. But this breathing exercise I do every time I make a financial decision. So whether I'm making, $1,000 or $100,000 decision, I take these deep breaths. So you're going to take 3 breaths. You're going to inhale for 3, hold for 3, and then release for 3. So close your eyes and go ahead and inhale, hold, release. Inhale again, hold, release. One more time, a big inhale, hold, release. Keep those eyes closed. And I want you to think about what you see yourself in the next month, in the next 6 months, in the next 12 months. You see yourself being financially savvier. You see yourself being the business owner that you've always wanted. You see yourself taking the time to thrive in your business. You are capable. You are smart. You've invested your time to be here with us here at Tory Burch Foundation. And more importantly, you matter, and you create those boundaries for yourself. Whatever mistakes you make, they're not mistakes. They're going to get you closer to what you want. They're all learning experiences. Learn from them, apply the new tactic, new strategy, because 2024 can be a very profitable and wonderful year for you. Okay, open your eyes. Thank you for participating in that. Do this, and if you possibly could do this on your own, I actually do 8, inhale for 8, hold for 5, release for 3, sometimes longer, it just depends, as many times. And how many of you felt that, put in the chat where your shoulders dropped, your heart rate just slowed down just a little bit. And let's be honest, when we talk about money, we can get pretty worked up about it. That adrenaline just kicks in. All right, let's move on. Oh, actually one more. So money moves part, this is a fun one that I do. Some people are like, I'm not into breathing. I'm too all over the place. So I do the quick money moves. I love to dance. So it's a quick one. It's actually more like a tapping, but it's I make money moves. And you do it a couple times. So I make money moves. I make money moves. You could do whatever you want, but it puts you in this fun different. It's no longer that funk, right? And so if you don't want to do the breathing, do the money moves. I do both. Especially when I'm about to ask for, a big amount of money. It helps me just relax me and reminds me why I'm doing this. So fun little 2 tips. Now, top business finance mistakes. I wanted to include this because I can tell you all the right things you should be doing, but what I see oftentimes, and so many people tell me this, that they are starting out their business or they're growing their business and they're trying to keep up with everyone else. Your business finances are so crucial and only you know what you're doing, right? Maybe your accountant and maybe your partner or your team. And it's important for you to keep track of where you are, right? Not just looking at your spreadsheets and having a timeline or looking at your goals on a daily basis, but only you know where you want to be. So I always tell people that example. Was it Sam Walton? Yes, he is, the creator of Walmart. And for years after he was a multimillionaire, he still drove around in his ugly little truck because he didn't want his competitors to know how well he was doing. And I think about some of these stories of very financially well-off people and really legacies and businesses that they built for their families. It's because they didn't worry so much about what someone else is doing. And I know it's really hard when it comes to social media. If any of you've seen my social media, it's like all over the place because life is messy and life is hard. And sometimes it's challenging. And so when you see someone like, oh, they just leased out a nice car, or they finally got their retail space, or, they got this in place, or whatever we feel we're comparing ourselves with, one, we don't know their financial situation. I know many business owners that look good from afar, but when you look at their paper, I can tell you they might not even last the end of the year because they're not thinking on their business. They're too caught up on what everyone else is doing or what they think they should be doing. You know your business in and out. And if you're starting out with your own business, take the time to get to know, get mentors, get people that are in that industry so you can learn what not to do. And so I always say your finances are so connected to what you do. For me, I am not going to worry about having extra bling or things that I see maybe other people doing because we're on very different wavelengths. We all have different values, and ideally, we want to reach our goals. So keep that in mind. I don't want you to fall into that trap. Now, budgeting for your business person versus your personal finance. So here, I think this is a really important topic as well, because budgeting sounds so, what's the word? It's not taboo, but it's kind of frustrating for many people. I look at them as creating healthy habits. What does your budget look like? You're going to have 2 different budgets, right? From your personal budget to your business budget as well. So I want you to understand that there should be 2 separate ones, but maybe you are packing your lunch on a daily basis instead of taking out, right? One of my mentors, they have a multi-million-dollar business. And I remember he said the first 5 years, even though he was doing really well, there was moments where it got a little rough because the seasons were not as he thought they would be. He would work during that 1-hour lunch break at a lunch truck, just to make sure all his employees were paid. And I love that story because now to see the empire they built is so powerful. So don't be afraid to do what you need to do. And I always think of most business owners, especially entrepreneurs, were that I'm going to get it done. I will figure it out. Don't be ashamed to do what you need to do, but understanding that having a budget for both is really important, right? So saying, what, I'm going to take a cut here in order to make sure this is taken care of, and also make sure that you're getting paid well, that it's not going to cause resentment, that it's not going to cause you feeling stressed out about what you're doing. I can't stress that enough. Now, this one I put in because I feel like I'd be missing out like explaining this or talking about the state of the economy. People always ask me like, what do you feel about the recession? How do you feel about what's going on today in our industries, right? And so all of you on this call, you have different businesses, but I want you to understand that it doesn't matter what the economy is going on. There's always opportunities that you can take advantage of. During a recession, I personally know, and I know many people have said, we've thrived more. And what I mean by that is you can take advantage of the resources you have now. So the first thing I want you to think about is, who can I collaborate with? Is there someone that has a strength that you don't have that maybe you can join forces with? How can you expand your business as well as theirs? This is it's such a key that I think a lot of people miss out on. I'd rather get 50% of something than 100% of nothing. And so that's one way to do it. Second is, I want you to really think about what resources are available to you. Be careful of some free resources that aren't helpful, but I really recommend checking out Tory Burch Foundation and so many organizations that are going to help you make sure that these are resources that are available to you. As taxpayers, there's so many, which I'll talk about SBA, and there's other ones that you can take advantage of. But this is the time to thrive. When other people might be struggling, you might have the opportunity to, buy something low and then maybe later sell it high, or use that for your business. Or maybe you're like, maybe I need to downsize certain things that I don't need anymore. We've heard this often, right? Where people said, I thought I needed a commercial space or an office or retail space, when in reality, I'm going virtual. We've seen a lot of us gone through that pivoting stage. So look at where you are and use those resources careful. Another one, I put cash is king, but I should have just put cash is queen, right? So cash on hand is very helpful. We know that there's debt to income ratios when we look at how much debt are we bringing into our business, how much do we actually have to play with. The more equity you have, the more that you can do. And I'm going to repeat this. So I want you to make sure if you're ever applying for a business loan or any type of loan, get it when you don't need it. Let me repeat that. You're applying for a business loan, get it when you don't need it. What I mean by that is you are most likely going to have great credit score. You're probably going to have some equity already. You're probably in a good financial place that you can say, you know what, let's see what that looks like. What requirements do I need to fulfill in order to meet that loan? Or I saw people say that they want to apply for grants, right? Look at them now. And if you feel you don't qualify, find out what it is that you need to do in order to qualify the following year, right? Especially if you're small business owner, women of color. There's just so many different types of opportunities, financial opportunities that you can take advantage of, and understanding that you meet those requirements. So it's better to get it then, as opposed to when you do need the loan. Guess what? Chances are it might be harder, and you probably get a higher interest rate because you're probably tapped out. You probably have way too much debt. You probably didn't think ahead of time and say, you know what, that loan would have come in handy a year ago, right? So I want you to hone down and say, at least let me look at and build that relationship with the bank or who you are going to connect with in order to get that loan. Lenders want to know someone has a financial strength within their business. And last but not least is your credit, right? This could be your credit score. Keeping an eye on that. But more importantly, what type of credit do you have available in case you need to use it, and use it properly, right? When you're paying vendors, when you're working with, pop-up events, whatever that might be. So these are areas that I think you can always strive, especially during recession. I often tell people, this happened a couple of times, especially during the recession, where I bought a property full cash and my offer was much lower than everybody else's. It actually got rejected 3 times. But the 4th time I got it. And the reason why is because everyone else had to apply for loans and they didn't have, basically I could close tomorrow. And that made the difference. And I think that is so important that sometimes we take that for granted. Or, you know what, having that equity line of credit was so helpful to have. And for me, it was just a peace of mind. I wasn't necessarily using it, but it made the difference. So I want you to think about that. Now, I'm going to share with you one of my little cheat sheets. I mean, I love giving homework. How else are you going to learn? And this one will be available to anyone that's on this webinar. And obviously, Tory Burch will have the sheet as well if you want to get it personally. But this is what I call my goal sheet, right? It's more of a financial payoff. I know a lot of business owners will tell me I have so much debt or I have a lot of credit cards. I don't really know how to get a hold of it. There's so many different ways that you can pay. There are different types of styles of paying down your debt. I like the snowball method. There's just the avalanche. There's so many different ones, but this one, I feel like the one sheet, it makes it so much easier to put everything down in paper and writing down, okay, what kind of debt do I have? What kind of, is it a loan? Is it a credit card? Is it a line of credit? The interest that you're paying on that, and put the one with the highest interest first. You always want to make sure you pay off the one with the highest interest first, because that's what's going to really eat into you paying down your loan as quick as possible. The balance that's owed and the minimum payment that you will be doing, and so forth. You list it from highest to lowest. It's a simple sheet. There's so many great apps out there that you can use. Even writing it down, Excel, whatever works for you, you can use a combination. But I feel like this really just helps people be like, okay, writing it down just helps declutter your mind, really does. It helps with that mental state. And then also, I love checking that off. I don't know anybody else that's like that. When you're like, yay, I paid off that debt or I paid off this one, and now I have this credit limit available when I need it. And so keeping of track of that. Here was that question again. So your financially savvy plan for the next 12 months, what does that look like, right? What does that look like for you? How many of you know what your busy seasons are? Put it in the chat if you know. Like for me, I know from January to end of May, it is my busiest season. And then in the summer, about a month and a half, I have a slow season. And then right again, August up until the end of November, it's extremely busy for me. However, in the beginning, I had no idea what my seasons would be like. I started in an industry when most people didn't even know what financial literacy was. And so I had to come up with that industry for myself. And now I'm very clear on when my business is doing well. I know when I will get more work, or I know those seasons that aren't as fast as I want them to be, they're slow. Then that's when I need to make sure I have enough in my emergency fund, right? Emergency savings, to tap into in case I need to, or just being able to balance out the 12 months. So I want you to think that way ahead. If some of you are like, oh yeah, I got the year down, I know exactly when my seasons are, I want you to also look at what your next 5 years look like. This is huge because the pandemic changed a lot for so many of us. We pivoted a lot. Maybe we altered certain things about our business, bringing different multiple streams of income. So it forced us to do that. And now I think differently about the next year, about the next 5 years. It's not the same. So I want you to always think about what's the next step. Here's my other fun checklist. So I had to include this because we are not only business owners, but it's about our personal finances too, right? Like I said, there's some similarities. This one you'll have, I won't go into this whole bit of it, but I love having this, which includes like, it's basically a check off. Did I get my living trust and will in place? My life insurance, tax planning. Do I have a Roth or 401k? What type of retirement investment do you have? Other stocks investments, real estate, emergency fund. Why I like sharing this is for 2 reasons. Most business owners that I talk to will tell me, oh my God, my business is doing well and I just can't wait to see it continue to grow. And it's just been a great time. And the question I ask them, and I'm like, okay, great. Do you have a living trust set up? And they always look at me like, and I go, the reason why is you're building this business most likely for you or your family. And if something were to happen to you, are they taken care of? If something were to happen to you, is your partner getting everything? Or is the bank going to seize everything? Or what if you physically can't work? Maybe you're sick. How will they know to make sure that all this stuff is in place? Now, looking at that checklist, I don't want you to be like, oh my God, I have none of that. I want you to say, okay, this is stuff I'm going to work on. And I don't expect you to get it done in a week. It could take a year because some of this stuff is a little costly, but it's totally worth it. Too many times, I'm in my 40s now, and I often see so many 20, 30-year-olds like, oh, I'm not even thinking about that stuff. And it happens. Something happens and someone passes away. And guess what? You are left in financial ruins because you didn't have a plan in place. And your business is so impersonal, like I said, because it's going to help not only for yourself, but your family or your community ahead. So take the time to do so, because I don't want you to get stuck with the 4Ds. I call the 4Ds of financial disaster, which could be debt. Debt can really ruin you, or a death in the family, or a disease, which we saw during the pandemic. And last but I'm listening, not only death, but it's understanding that divorce can also happen, right? So whether it's an actual marriage or a partnership within the business, all of these areas need to be clear. And then we'll have time for questions. I just want to make sure you get through these. So here's my other one. I'm going to plug in our podcast because who else, you have to plug your business. I want you to know that there's resources out there on episode 100. And we have more than a few episodes on that, where I talk about my favorite books, my favorite podcasts, my favorite shows that talk about money, about financial literacy, about business. That's why we do it, because we want other people, not everyone has access to financially successful people. And I don't mean just multimillionaires and billionaires that we interview, but what we've seen in our experience. I always think when I talk to an expert and when they call me a financial expert, I'm like, hold on, what? One, it reminds me how old I'm getting older, and I'm not old, but I always think of someone that's an expert that's been doing this for many, many years, thousands and thousands of hours. I've had thousands of clients. And I think it's so important to understand that there's resources available. And I want to share that with everyone. So one of my favorite episodes is that 100, where we talk about some of our favorite books, but there's so many books made for women now as well, women of color, depending on your industry. I highly recommend you to take 20 minutes out of your day, really, to listen to something that's going to motivate you, maybe your commute to work. There's a few documentaries, one that I'm going to put, because I love that I always learn from it. There's called Big Boom Bust Theory. And I should have written on there, but I'll make sure I'll put it in the chat later. It just explains a little about the way economy is. And it's funny, it has little, puppets in place. And it just kind of gives you an understanding a little bit how our capitalist society works. And so I very much highly talk about that. And then I mentioned, obviously, Tory Burch Foundation. I can't stress it enough. If you haven't looked at the tools they provide, budget planning, things that you can use for yourself, absolutely chime in and check in with them. And also the SBA, which is a Small Business Association administration, you can actually get not just the valuable information you get. Some people just think of, oh, they just provide loans. No, actually, did you know, because as taxpayers, you can take advantage of having someone help you with writing a business plan. They usually have a lawyer on staff. They have financial consultants, business owners that can help you formulate a strategic plan. And this is all free to you because we pay as taxpayers, right? You can go online, figure that out. SCORE is another helpful one, but there's so many different organizations out there that are helpful that you can chime in and say, okay, this is something that's going to help me along the way. And now on Netflix, I see so many shows that are about money. So I highly recommend, taking maybe one day a month that you're like, I'm going to watch something that's catered towards money. And it could be fun, right? I like the one by Remy. It's I'm going to show you how to make rich. And I was so fortunate enough to be a keynote speaker with him at an event. And the fact that he has this amazing series on Netflix, I highly recommend you watching that. There's just so many things that you can do to get you excited about money. I want you to feel motivated and excited to learn something new about your finances every single day. All right. And I can't stress that you got to follow Tory Burch. What are the next steps? It's really coming down every day and saying, I have a ritual set in place. I have a ritual set in place for the week. I'm going to connect with my accountability partners. How many of you already saw on the chat? You're like, oh my gosh, I need to connect with her because she has the exact same goal as I am. Maybe we can achieve it a lot quicker together. Right. And so for me, having those check-ins, I have those days all the time where I'm like, oh, how am I going to get through this? Or I need a backup plan. And I always tell people, I don't do this alone. Absolutely not. Before my husband is my tech guy today. We have an in-home studio as well, but I have an incredible team. Like I have a senior producer, a great co-host, agent, accountant, lawyer, like people on my team that I need on it feels like a monthly basis at least. And so it does take a team, but when you're starting out, you're doing everything on your own and that's okay. But understand that creating the right team for you is going to help you thrive. I don't want you to feel like you have to do this on your own forever, because that's not how it should be, right? It should be you enjoying what you do best within your business. And with that, I want to open it up to questions as well. Feel free to follow me, as I know Molly will mention as well, but there's just so many things that we can talk about that I know we just little nitbit and you learned so much information today, but I highly know that you're going to do well 2024 because you showed up today and invested your time. So thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to hearing your success stories. Please let me know, because it's always a great joy knowing that what we're doing, I get emotional, matters because there's so much representation that's needed. And luckily for this foundation to help so many of us that needed it. So thank you.
Natalie, thank you so much. This is incredible. And we have tons of questions to get through. So I'm gonna dive right in. You just said something about surrounding yourself with a team and knowing that you don't have to do it alone. For folks who are ready to bring somebody on to help them think about their finances, what should they be looking for in that person?
Oh, yes. Great question, because one, predatory lending happens, scammers happen, or really just people that aren't there for your best interest. So I like to tell people, ask for referrals, like, and interview people. For me, it was finding the right accountant, right? Finding the right person on my team. It doesn't always happen on the first one. It's like dating, right? Sometimes you have to try them out, and it's nothing against them. It's just maybe you didn't really jive well, or maybe you had a bad experience prior. So it's really important to ask for referrals, look at their track record, be careful of, I sometimes will see, especially on social media, we'll see like, oh, they're an expert in this. And I'm like, how are they an expert, right? They don't have any, thousands of clients. They haven't done this for many, many years. They don't have the educational background. That's why I always tell people, it's important. I'm going to go to the doctor that has the degree. So same thing goes with your finances. Go with someone that is licensed or has a certificate, or at least has the track record to show you that, they know what they're doing and they can help you along the way. So excellent question. Referrals is key.
Amazing. Well, we want to double back to the money story, and someone shared that their money story has made them risk averse. So how can people here who that just hit home with get around that mental block about risk?
So I think the easy answer, we could talk about this for days, but I think the easiest answer is giving yourself the break, knowing that it's going to take time, right? When we heal, it doesn't happen overnight. When we encounter an experience that made it difficult or a challenge, we might encounter again in the future, right? We don't always learn from the first time around, or maybe it shows up in a different way. And so giving yourself that break to say, okay, you know what? This is no longer a mistake. This is a learning experience. And I want to see the next level coming from that. And that happened to me. I had what could have been a $400,000 huge mistake and lost everything. Ended up being, I broke even, and I kid you not, less than a year later, made 200,000 because I learned from that mistake. So I always tell people, just look at it as a learning experience, but give yourself the break that it's going to take time to heal, take time to implement. And guess what? You might fall again and start all over again. And that's okay. I don't want someone to feel that because their first business failed, that the second one will, or the third or the fourth. It takes time to get that groove right. So give yourself the break.
Oh, I love that. And like being kind to ourselves. And I love everything you shared about really creating the space for this to be an exercise of self-care and self-investment.
Yeah.
So I guess speaking of investments and personal money, if somebody is establishing an LLC and they want to use their personal money to scale, how can they do that without putting assets at danger? Like, what are the safeguards here?
Yeah. So with that, I'm going to answer to best of my knowledge, but like I said, I want you to seek out information from your accountant or because they know your full, all of your financial background. But what I like to say is, are you protected, right? So talking to a lawyer, talking to a CPA that knows tax law is really important. You don't want to leverage everything that you have. I know sometimes I'll see these shows on Shark Tank and like, oh, we gave everything above and beyond. Literally, they put the house on the mortgage and all that stuff. And because their projections were great last year and they expect it to be better next year, or some of them literally don't have any projections, but they know it's going to be that, $1 million idea. I cringe when I hear that because it's rare that it actually turns out well for them. And so I don't ever want someone to leverage everything that they have, especially when they're, like you said, starting out, creating that LLC, and look into these grants that you can apply for to help you fund your startup. This is why people ask for not only, investments in their business, but you don't have to leverage. It's important to be able to use other people's money as well wisely. So just keep that in mind. Protect your family and protect your legacy.
Such good advice. And I think it lends itself well into this other question that someone shared about, is it possible to run a business without touching debt?
Yes, it is, depending on the business too. It's such a great answer. I'm sorry for that, but I know tons that have started, with $100 and was okay. I've also seen people do really well that got a business loan starting out, or invested a lot into their company. I think it all depends on the person, how fast they want to grow, depending on their business, depending on how well they are with their finances too. Once again, I don't want someone to say I put in 100,000, not really knowing what I was doing. That's why I say, make those mistakes, but with the, little $1,000 here, and give yourself once again the grace to do that, because it's also a money mindset. I didn't get a chance to talk about that so much, but like, for example, the first time I actually made a profit after everything was paid, insurance, everything is covered, everything is paid out. And I'm like, yay, $50 a month. Like I'm no longer breaking even. Right. And then that became thousands of dollars, and it became six figures a month. And so those little things really mess with your mind. You're not ready for it. I was in shock the first time I saw that six figure in 1 month. I'm like, is this correct? And so, but it's, once again, it's gradual. It's like building a physical muscle. You're not going to start it with 100 pounds. Like, just start lightly, 15, 20, whatever works. And then you build on that muscle. Same thing goes with your money.
It's such great advice. And I love what you said too, about really understanding what you want to do. If you are going to take on debt, we don't have to be averse to debt, but know where you want to go and why you're taking it.
If I may add, there's the difference between good and bad debt. I can do a whole present, I do on credit itself, but there's good and bad debt. So good debt is something that you are going to be able to pay off, that you can show. It's like, this is actually can be an asset in the future. I can sell it off. I can make money off of it. Bad debt is something like, maybe credit card debt that you can't really prove that you were using it towards just your business. So, a car loan, a property loan, those are considered actually good debt. Granted, no one wants debt, period, but using debt properly, and knowing how to leverage that is really important. And I know a lot of business owners sometimes are afraid to get a credit card or a credit line for that reason. And I say, you know what, you can probably make a lot more money if you were to get that little loan, as opposed to doing it slowly. So it just depends on the person too.
Well, somebody asked, you had mentioned an equity line of credit as well while you were going through the presentation. And so I wanted to double back, and can you explain that a bit for anyone who's not familiar with the term?
Yeah. So in terms of equity, it can be a different range, right? Once again, depending on your business, but there's business line of credit, right? I've known many entrepreneurs, business owners that will take a line of credit from their home, a line of credit from their, their own personal credit card. I try to tell people stay away from personal loans because those interest rates are usually horrible. But a business line of credit it's just like a credit card too, as well. So you're like, okay, I'm able to use $20,000, but I really only needed two. Okay, let me use those $2,000, excuse me, towards what I need and pay it back. It's basically money you will have to pay back. It's not a grant, right? It's not something that's giving you money, or maybe a family member that's like, here's the money, go do what you got to do. A line of credit does have to show yourself. You have to decent credit to be like, oh, you know what? I can prove that I can pay it back. That's why we emphasize credit scores being so important. The better the credit score, the better the interest rate, right? The worse the credit score, ooh, you're going to be stuck with one of those high things. And that's why we say, look out for predatory lending. I usually cringe and hate especially when you drive through certain communities and you'll see like, hey, your credit doesn't matter. We'll give you this loan, for the car, for the, cash advance or whatever it might be. Chances are you're paying way too much money that you should be getting on your own. So line of equity is going to be what you have too. So if you have, this is a whole nother, I don't want to confuse people, but when you're looking at your debt of your business as opposed to the income that you have in your business, they want to know how much equity you have. So maybe you own the property that your business is in, right? Or a lot of people don't know that they can use the space in their home as a tax write-off, right? And so you're using your actual assets that you have, and that's something of leverage to, trying to get a loan and say, you know what, I do have a car or I do have a food truck. What kind of equity can I use from that, right? So it's once again learning how to leverage it.
And I think because everybody's business is so unique, I think highlighted even more so the importance of having a trusted person that you can turn to talk these things through with and brainstorm the possibilities that you might not see because you're just in it every day as the business owner.
Yeah. And as a business owner, you're gonna hopefully expand your business, right? Not just necessarily that you're gonna grow it, meaning you might choose a different form of income, right? I see people starting podcasts. I've had my podcast for 9 years now. I've seen people like, oh, I'm gonna add that too, right? Or they want to write books. I do that. All these things that we end up doing for multiple streams of income. So it's constantly growing. And so it's really important to know you can't be a master of all of it. So you need, once again, the team, you need to know the knowledge, do the research before doing so. But all of these little things can help play and create a bigger business for you.
Absolutely. And I guess since we have been talking a little bit about tax write-offs, and I know that, and we've clarified you are not here providing tax advice, but are there important things to know about tax write-offs for the business? Like if you had one or two key takeaways for folks.
I love how because here's a number one mistake I hear so often. So I rather talk about that because this is where I see too many people falling into the trap, especially when people are starting out within the first 5 years. They'll lease out a really fancy car. They will, get that retail space or that office space, or on reality, things that they don't necessarily need. Yes, they could be helpful to the business, of course. I understand that, but they so overextend themselves in the beginning that they cannot sustain themselves. That's why most businesses fail within the first 5 years, right? And then, the numbers can increase depending on your industry, right? And so I think when it comes to tax write-off, understand that it doesn't mean it's free money forever, or it's something that you won't have to pay back, whether it's a portion or not. And so I think I'm a big fan of frugal living or minimalism, because it's for that reason that when you're starting out, I rather put that $1,000 towards the product, towards something that's going to help me in the future, as opposed to looking like the part, right? And too often, because of social media, because of, I live in LA, which is one of those areas, right, where it's like, oh, so-and-so's driving a nice car. I'm like, my car is paid off and it's not a nice car. It's a decent car. It's a great car. But I'd rather be driving that as opposed to leasing out something that's not really within my financial plan. And so really look at yourself, your values, and understanding that tax write-offs are important. That's why I recommend people having a professional with them, because my accountant told me too, she's like, you don't know everything. And because the laws are changing, did you know you can get a tax write-off on, that equipment? We have a podcast studio in our home because we use it all the time. I'm doing virtual media tours all the time. This is part of my business. So understanding that tax write-offs are very helpful, but understand that it's not something that will help you sustain if you're not thinking clearly in the beginning in order to grow. Little by little, you can expand, but don't do it all at once. I don't want you to look like you're making $1 million when you only have one client that is not a permanent client, because no client is permanent.
Oh, that's a good one to remember. No client is permanent. No customer is permanent.
Right.
We had an entrepreneur share that an investor offered her millions more than what she asked for. And she said, no, I told you what I could do with the money I asked for, and I'm not going to take the rest. I'm going to show you how much I can stretch this money. So it's all about that relationship with money and mindset. So I guess if you're going to leave everybody with one takeaway today, tomorrow they got to go action something. What is that? Believe
in yourself. I know it sounds cheesy, but you can do this. And if you feel like you failed, or you're like, this business isn't for me, I'm calling it quits, that's okay too. It might be just a calling for something better and greater for you to do something else. And I've seen that a lot happening lately, where people are pivoting. So believe in yourself that you can do it and pivot with it. So believe and pivot as much as you can, because I think that's something I wish I would have told and I still have to tell myself, I believe in myself, because the imposter syndrome always tends to creep up here and there. So believe in yourself, because it's possible. You're here today, and I have a total faith that you can do something great. Amazing advice for everybody to walk out of here with and start 2024 on a really strong note. Natalie, I cannot thank you enough. Today has been incredible. We're so glad we got you back for another webinar with us.